Well, I'd like to discuss red coral, or Corallium rubrum as it's called by the Latin name. Red coral is a skeletal colony that forms generally from as high as 3 meters, but even down to 300 meters, as polyps that join together that extract calcium out of the seawater to form a calcium carbonate that, though matte on appearance, will take a high polish when worked in a lapidary. And as we know, red coral represents Mars, and I found some very fascinating observations over the years, the last 25 years with red coral, and I'd like to share some of them with you. It's been found at excavation sites that are 25,000 years old. It's been used as a form of jewelry for that long a period. In Wiesbaden, Germany, it was found. There's records by Ptolemy of it having been traded with India in the 1st century AD, and I'm sure that trade has been going on for thousands of years longer than that. It's Corallium rubrum comes from the Mediterranean, mostly the Western Mediterranean, a little bit in the Adriatic. They mine about 60 tons that I know of a year, as well as Corallium japonicum, which is another form of equally good red coral with a slightly darker red color that occurs around Taiwan, Japan. However, the reason why I'm choosing this subject to talk about is coral, I think, is one of the greatest unsung heroes of the gemological kingdom. I've had incredible results with it from many people who've been natural, healthy skeptics, and I'd like to talk about some of the experiences with red coral that I've had. I wrote a story on the website astrogems.com called The Red Coral Necklace Story about 20 years ago, just as the internet was coming out, and I haven't really changed it that much. I probably should. There's a lot more observations I should add to that page. At that time, I had a motorbike accident years ago where the kickstand of the motorbike stuck itself into my leg behind the knee and did quite a bit of nerve damage and, physical damage, etc. And I was lying in bed 3 days later, becoming very aware that the healing processes of my normal, very strong metabolic activity was not doing its stuff. And I was thinking, well, gosh, I wonder if there's anything that I could take or do to facilitate the healing process. Well, at that time, I'd been reading every book I could find on the healing properties of gemstones, and I remembered this association with red coral and injuries, and so I hobbled out of bed and I put on a red coral necklace that I had in the cabinet and lay back in bed, and within seconds I was really deeply surprised to feel a very, very warm, strong life force enveloping my damaged tissue area around my knee, and I was completely shocked and surprised that it was so profound and so obvious and so strong. And I would credit it almost from that minute onwards that my knee started definitely healing rapidly and getting better. I've since lent it to, or sold or lent red coral necklaces to many friends who have had surgery, and consistently they've been told by their doctors or caregivers that they were surprised with the speed of their recovery. And that's particularly profound. When you give great trauma to the body, you're going to take away a lot of its metabolic strength and energy, and red coral is a heating medium. I have Mars and Aries, so I have a very strong Mars in my chart. I always tend to be particularly athletic, competitive in athletics, and consequently have a pretty strong physical characteristic. because of that, if I wear a red coral necklace in summer, Southern California, when I was in my 20s, if I wore a red coral necklace, I would start sweating within 2 or 3 hours. Now in my 50s, wearing a red coral necklace, I'll just start feeling abnormally assertive after maybe 6 or 7 hours, but I won't start sweating. So there's a sensitivity and relationship between how well I can integrate with the coral necklace energy and also how much I've already got of the similar harmonic frequency electricity in my body that will declare how beneficial it's going to be for me. Consequently, whenever I have a friend who's got, say, severe chest infection or issues, pneumonia, etc., I always say, hey, put this on, and they'll invariably come back a few days later saying, that was amazing, I couldn't believe gemstones could do that. And funny enough, I made a lot of 9-gem bangle sales just using that as a medium. The profound thing about red coral is it's heating, it's warming, and it engenders physical life force. Mars represents the warrior, the athlete, the soldier, the policeman, people who are far more rajasic in their outgoing, needed activities, profession. And Mars, or red coral, most obviously represents those characteristics. As we get older, our ability to absorb needed planetary stimuli for our electrical bodies weakens, and the life force slowly tends to depart our physical body. Red coral is a great aid to facilitate, slow down that process. Individuals I've met, and it's really quite easy to, when you meet people, to see what strengths and weaknesses they have planetarily when you've kind of been looking at it that way in a long time. Pale, sickly, less athletic, kapha, sometimes vata people who are not, procrastinators, lethargic people, but are very much, again, the non-athletic type of personalities generally have a weakness in their chart with the placement of Mars, and as a consequence they're not able to absorb the needed planetary radiation from Mars, and the electromagnetic supplement for that would be red coral. It's interesting that coral is actively grown, sometimes at great depth, in the ocean. I liken an example, a parallel example of what Edgar Cayce once said about the pearl. And he said to a person who asked a question that had been recommended that they wear a pearl by Edgar Cayce, this is in the 20s, why should I wear the pearl? And Edgar Cayce said in trance, and remember, he never remembered what he said, it had to be written down. He said, think how the pearl has been made. It is Mother Nature's reaction inside an oyster to overcome an irritation. Now the pearl represents the moon, which is emotion, and when it's not placed well in the chart can create an amplification of emotion and sort of a delusional imbalance to circumstances which affect that one's happiness and feelings. Well, red coral very much is grown creatively in the ocean with this incredible orange-red color, and there has some organic parallels to the calcium carbonate process, of which they both are, with the pearl. And it's a fascinating material. It's not a mineral. It's a calcium carbonate. It's not hasn't got a geometric lattice like a crystal, but it's uniquely positioned as having great respect for its healing properties, or I would rather say not its healing properties, but its abilities to stimulate the healing qualities already inside the physical body. And over the years, having sold many red coral necklaces, which generally average around 180 carats, I always explain to people remember, this necklace is a tool. It's not something to be worn all the time, except in under very unusual circumstances. It's something to be worn when the weather's very cold, when you're feeling the cold, when you're run down, when you have health challenges relating to lethargy, in other words, congestion and slowness, not a high fever, absolutely not a high fever. When you're feeling tired, fatigued, jet lagged, all those circumstances, red coral can facilitate in those circumstances.